Well, things are predictably unpredictable in the Pac-12. Coach Bill Ferguson, the former men's coach at USC, Southern Cal Volleyball Club, and television analyst around the country for women's volleyball, joins me now. And Bill, make some sense out of the Pac-12 for me, will you?
I don't know if you can. Well, at least in the recent past, we've had SC and Washington have been the two teams that have been kind of running away with the conference, split against each other, seem to be there. And now over time, you have two teams that are, I think, kind of what I call sitting in the weeds. You have UCLA sitting in there and Stanford, both, I believe, in third and fourth. And then, here's the real interesting deal is Stanford and Washington are going to play this week. So I think that'll really tell a lot. Stanford had the injury to the middle earlier in the season. I think they dropped a couple tough matches, and I think they had a tough one with SC. So you're going to see some things play out. I think Stanford's, legit and for real. And I think they've been waiting for a matchup like this to come along to see, to probably see where they're at. And SC keeps trucking along, and so does Washington. So I really think that Washington-Stanford matchup is going to start telling a big story as to how things are going to go down towards the NC2As. When you get into a conference, you got to play each other twice. You get into the NC2As, and then it just becomes about what region you're in, who you play against, and you only got to beat that team once in advance. And then it continues to be about the matchups through the tournament. So I think these are Stanford and UCLA are really interesting because they get into the tournament, they get into a pod that's real workable for them and has teams that, they match up well against, and all of a sudden you see them playing in a regional final.
Well, I can guarantee you nobody in the country wants to play Stanford or UCLA in the first two rounds because and we may have been fooled by some of the problems Stanford had early on. But let me ask you about USC. So USC is undefeated, goes up to Washington, loses a quick match. It was not as close as you would have expected. Then 2 days later, goes to Washington State and really had to rally in the fifth to win in five.
Yeah.
Came home this past weekend and looks like the USC of old. What is a trip like that as a former coach of a team, that you've experienced that, where you have that tough loss, lose another one that you shouldn't, and then have to regroup? What does it take right there?
Well, I think in particular in USC's case, they've got some players that are a little inexperienced. You have the freshman Ford on the outside, and obviously your setter. So it's their first go this year, and that's their first go on that trip. And we used in the MPSF in the Conference of Men's played, and we used to have a trip like that where we'd go to Northern California and play Stanford and Pacific, and it was two very different flavors of matches. And the Washington State swing is really tough because the travel's a bear. Getting to Pullman, Washington, where Washington State is, you're on a puddle jumper or a long bus ride, depending on how you want to get there, right? So that's a big deal for a first-year player. And for SC to have two true freshmen to go play Washington in that arena, hostile environment, fantastic team. I know Ford didn't have her greatest match that night, but to have them then have to do the planes, trains, and automobiles over to Pullman and get a victory there, if I'm Coach Mick Haley, I'm feeling really good about things going into the home stretch because now my freshmen have kind of, they've seen everything, so to speak, or as close to it as they're going to, and so that trip is going to prepare them, I think, for the home stretch as far as being able to maybe not have the best match, being able to bounce back, and then go through the crazy planes, trains, and automobiles part of it, which they're going to likely have to go through at some point if they're going to have any success in the NC2A tournament, which is pretty likely. So if I'm Mick Haley, I'm thrilled about that whole experience. I know my team's grown. I know my freshmen are likely not freshmen anymore. You always hear that. So I think that's a good thing for them.
All right, we talked about the other teams you don't want to play, but nobody wants to play either one of the Arizona schools, Arizona or Arizona State.
Oh gosh, no.
Colorado is the kind of team, they're so up and down, but again, right situation in the NCAA tournament. But and Oregon, of course, same thing. Oregon, and has been a roller coaster ride. But let's leave it with your occasional surfing buddy Mike Sealy and his UCLA team. Slowly, quietly moved into third place,
sitting in the weeds.
They have to be in the discussion right now, don't they?
They do, and they just keep kind of plugging away, figuring out what works. I don't know if they're maybe in a sense drafting SC, because that's your travel partner is really important. When you're on the road, whichever school, whichever conference, if your travel partner is a tough out, then that makes it easier on you, because your opponents have to game plan against two really good teams. All right. And so as a coach and trying to prepare your team, I mean, it's tough. If you're in that travel group where both of you guys are real good teams, then it's a bear for the other two, because they've got to be up and ready. And I think I don't know if it's a byproduct of maybe everybody gunning for SC and UCLA slides in there and takes advantage, and good on them for it. I also think there's a portion of that where UCLA is just kind of doing their thing quietly and letting SC get all the attention, and they're probably thrilled at that. Just, you guys go do your thing, and we're just going to do our thing over here. So I think it's a combination of everything. And so like you said at the beginning of our talk, I think whoever gets UCLA in the first couple rounds, that's going to be a nightmare matchup, because I think they're having played in the Pac-12 and having that competition every week. They're going to be ready for the postseason play, and I wouldn't be shocked if they're playing third weekend.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that's why we went to the Ferguson house to catch up with Bill, and good Pac-12 analysis, and always fun to visit with you.
All right, Lee. Thanks again. Love it.